Good morning. This is my third day in a row. Second conference. All right. So let's get started. Why don't we start with a brief introduction of the stuff that you do in your amazing companies?
I'll go first. Hi, I'm Chun-Che from Taiwan, and I'm from Numbers Protocol. I'm head of ecosystem growth, and I help the content creators and also news medias to protect their copyrights and give them the easier way to monetize their contents. And personally, I have more than 15 years of experience in tech industry. I used to work in TSMC as a semiconductor industry before, and I transferred into the blockchain industry in Numbers Protocol. And I hope you guys will enjoy the conversation here.
Awesome. Well, it's great to meet you both. My name is Christian. I'm the co-founder and COO of a company called Sanctum AI. We can get into what that is in a second, but my background is primarily in blockchain. I first got involved in 2016. I spent about 3 years at Consensus, leading one of their earlier portfolio companies called Alethio. We were building very early Ethereum analytics, too early, but that was exciting. And then I've also been involved in DeFi, and I'm very excited to be here today and talk about this topic.
Oh well, I mean, AI is already making like a great impact not only on the different outlets. Every sector is being like literally disrupted about all the potential that you have. But at the same time, if it's not handled properly, this can lead to a lot of other type of disruption, which would be penalizing from one side, the professionals, from the other side, the AI. And I think that is inevitable that until we get there, there will be a first real merge between two technologies, the AI from one side for the generation of the content. From the other, obviously, is going to be what today is guaranteeing the truth, which is the decentralization of blockchains. And here my first question, Chun-Che, is the content really truly ours? Are we still owner of what we are generating, or no?
Thank you. It's a good question. I'm going to see my script. I mean, in this AI era, the question about content ownership becomes complex as AI system can generate and also distribute content. The traditional definition for authorship and also ownership are challenged. While you may create a content, AI can produce variations, adaptations, or even entire new works based on your original input. So they blurred the line who owns the final product. And the key to ensure that the content remains truly ours is to establish and maintain clear provenance and rights management. This is where technology like blockchain comes into play. By embedded content with metadata that records its origin, authorship, and any other information you want, and creators can ensure their rights and maintain control of their own work. So even in this AI continues to evolve. So in this era, it's crucial to leverage this technology to protect IPs and ensure the content ownership is respected and also preserved.
Yeah. In my opinion, it's not only about what's the content that is generated that needs to be certified. That's something I've been preaching already in my previous panel, which is, but the other thing is also if the output is important from one end, the input, so the training models are also important from the other end, because improper training models, training data can generate bias and somehow outputs that can have a bias. So that is a very important thing to consider when we talk about AI. It's not only about what you generate. And here's my other question for you, Christian. And it is, what do you think? How do we think it's good to where is the good balance between the innovation and the integrity of what we are doing with the AI?
Yeah, I think just one quick comment on the last piece right up front. I think just to your point on inputs, I think it's very simple and it's very similar to a lot of search engine technology, social media, the inputs that you as users share with large language models, web-based models. These go into essentially improve those models over time. And the more sensitive that information is, the less you actually own your information. What I mentioned before, so Sanctum, we're essentially building an offline version of ChatGPT. So you download a quantized version, a smaller version of an open source language model. Right now, the leading model is Llama 3 from Meta, and you essentially have your own offline version of ChatGPT. So if you were to go to chatgpt.com, everything you put on that website is essentially logged against your data profile and is used to either tune that model or train that model in a future iteration. Whereas if you maintain some of these capabilities offline, you're more or less able to keep control of your data and also those outputs. The balance, I think, is important because web-based language models are very powerful and they can generate responses very quickly and they can handle multimodal inputs and generate movies, videos. So there's very powerful possibilities when it comes to using web-based language models. But the challenge there becomes these large companies taking advantage of the inputs that are put in, whether it's from artists, musicians, or everyday users. So you have to find, for yourself, what information do you want to share with these models? Think of it like you're sharing it with Google Search. Behind the scenes, there's not only a data profile that they're collecting and then selling, there's also you're collectively improving and enhancing the training of these models for future iterations. So it's just, the balance really depends on the individual user and how much you want to share. Right now, power is kind of coalescing in a few large companies. So, how they approach balance and innovation is you kind of look to history to see how that goes. But these tools are very empowering to us as individuals. We can choose what we share, and we can ultimately decide whether or not we believe the value of sharing information for a response or an output outweighs the cost to us, whether it's privacy or some sensitive information you have to share.
Yeah. Anyway, this question was this topic was really raised by some controversial allegations on some of the popular LLMs that someone have been accusing to be racist or to be sexist because they just trained with, they took the internet, they dumped it in, and then it happened that the majority of the content online is designed, is written by certain ethnies, and then in the end, that's the result. So that's why I think in the future, especially, there will be regulation in place. I'm pretty sure we will get there, and I think the best thing is to provide the right tools to support the upcoming regulation. Probably the best approach is to anticipate the regulation, building models and tools that they can take advantage, they can leverage and enforce, because that's the other thing. I mean, everybody here has children and or someone or a friend, and with the deep fakes now, it's incredible what you can do. The damages you can do is it's a very important thing. And what can I tell you? I'm gonna ask this to you because that's pretty much the core business of numbers protocol. If you believe that blockchain is really gonna save us from deep fakes.
That's a good question. Actually, we can provide trustworthy tools to to help us to fight the deepfake. But I think the answer is no, because in this world, if your assets or contents are valuable, people will always fake it and use it to profit, right? So, and currently you don't have an efficient way to verify those contents on internet. So it's not very easy for people to verify if the contents are authentic or is made by generative AI or is photoshopped by others. So I think the better expectation we will have is to have a tool to help us to, from the beginning to the end. For example, if you embedded those metadata into the digital content, for example, the pictures or music files or the videos, and then for the information of the creators, creation time, or any generative AI tools you use and embedded on blockchain, so that will make the provenance immutable and also traceable. So those tools might help you to make better decisions when you see if the picture is real or not. For example, Numbers Protocol had collaborated with Reuters for the United States presidential campaign in 2020. After the campaign, there a lot of going on happened, right? So we helped them to preserve all the evidence on blockchain and also on internet. So maybe in the future, people can review or see those incidents and to make the judgment themselves, because you make the pictures tell the stories themselves. So that's we can provide a better tool for them to do the decisions.
What they do as Sanctum AI is pretty much the answer. So you can enforce whatever you want, but there will always be someone that has a computer, a private computer, where they can run their AI that is not subject to control. My opinion is different, and is in the other direction. You need to obviously regulate the AI and enforce some tools on the AI if it's public, but then you have to enforce the same also on people. If I generate content, the tools to generate content should be, track the content I generate, and I should take full responsibility for it. It's not something you can control in 100% of cases, of course, but if you think about today, you can Photoshop someone, you can already do some damages.
Yes.
It's just that right now we tend not to believe so much to pictures and believe more to videos, but we start seeing, even with the current video editing tools, you start creating pretty convincing effects even without the AI. But we'll get there, and here is the question about how the ethical AI looks like in the development.
Sure. Yeah, I think just one quick comment on deepfakes. I think, it all depends on what the goal is. Blockchain cannot do anything around preventing you as an individual from reacting to a picture. What it can do is try to establish that via some tagging mechanism, this is an original, unaltered image or video. But most people will not take the effort or time to pursue to that end. So I think it's important to realize that deepfakes are here. They're going to get more convincing. And it's important to keep that in mind as we think about what are some safeguards we have in place. And I think, the more that these large language models by the bigger companies like OpenAI and Anthropic and Google are becoming ubiquitous, they almost present themselves as public goods, but they're really not, because the employees that are in the company policies that are setting the weights behind these models and how they're trained and tuned are not publicly known. There's no transparency. So the images or the responses that you receive based on your inputs are entirely determined by weighting that you have no control over. So I think open source language models help provide an answer to that, because you can see the weights, you can adjust the weights, you can correct the weights. Now, with that will come perhaps some negative outputs, for example. But the question becomes, how do you define accountability when it comes to outputs from AI? Now, with free speech, you kind of set the bar pretty high. You can't say bomb on an airplane, for example. So who determines whether an image is damaging, and who determines what the punishment for that image is. And I think the challenge is we don't know what the right answer is to who can make that determination. So I think deepfakes are here. They're going to be influential. We should be comfortable with that and kind of start to make our own decisions around kind of what that means for us and our decision making and all that. I think ethical AI in practice, I think it's going to be a challenging road ahead because right now, we are seeing again a concentration of hyper-scaling companies that are essentially dominating the public language model market, dominating R&D, and they're determining essentially the responses that you get from these models. So I look to the startup ecosystem. I look to other competitors of Sanctum, other companies that are building around open source language models, and I'm encouraged that this can offer a counterbalance to the convenience of just going to chatgpt.com, inputting a question, and then basing an action on that response. Because hallucinations are still real, and I think our tolerance or our ability to second guess something, whether it's a deep fake or a response from a large language model, may continue to diminish as these things get more impressive, but it doesn't mean we don't have to do our own due diligence. And we can't just rely on this technology to dictate our lives and our decision making. So ethical AI in practice, I think, has to incorporate transparency. It has to incorporate a wide range of parties, regulators, academia. It can't just be a subsegment of Google or OpenAI setting the weights on these models, and that's all we have to use. I think we're heading in a very difficult future if that's the path we kind of proceed on.
Well, the story is a little bit like TV was, in the 60s. Whatever was said on TV was the truth. And today it's a fact that people are using ChatGPT or other language model. And essentially, because they work most of the times, for them, that becomes the truth. So if you really want to make a comfortable use, you don't want to do always all that due diligence, which I agree. And for me, for example, for the kind of stuff I do, especially when coding, until you stay very generic, very superficial, you get great answer. It's a very good. It saves time. Instead of going look at a documentation, you can actually just pull out some of the information you need. Yeah. But stays and remains a probabilistic system. Probabilistic system means that there are always a percentage of error in what is pulled out. So the hallucination becomes visible to me because over a certain threshold, start becoming repetitive and doesn't really go where I need
Sure, yeah.
the LLM to go. But for the average user, might not be that obvious. It's a very important thing. There are models that are a hybrid model between an LLM, a transformer, and a deterministic system, which are semantic engines. The combination of the two offer a much more powerful solution because the deterministic system is more like a search engine, pulls out some results, and then the LLM transforms them in a human-readable conversation. But then you have a base information that is pretty much deterministic. The only thing you don't have a lose in that case is the reasoning that is the pleasant aspect of the LLM, but if you do these in steps, kind of becomes an acceptable trade-off. And it's something, for example, I invite you to explore. Around blockchain is a phenomenal technology today for certifying contents. It's not the 100% solution. In specific use cases, can be the 100% solution because if you are narrowing down the application on the healthcare or in the professional field when there is one software that is going to be, the connection between the language model and the output that you need, then you can certify the training set, you can certify the answer, because otherwise the AI becomes the place where to dump all the liability. If the decision was a good decision, it's my merit, I'm good. But if it's bad, it was the AI that gave me that answer. So you need to make sure that you protect both parties, because you want to protect the professional from one side, you want to protect the AI from the other side, because if you discredit the AI, people lose trust. And you want this to keep growing. And right now about all the investments, all these thing that is working around AI, I think it's disruptive, but there is, in my opinion, an overpricing, an over-perception. But, and the real innovation right now is the transformer. It's all around that. I hope that all these big things will, instead of deflate, converge toward new models that can even improve that. What's your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, I one thing I'll just mention, I think this idea of kind of convenience for users is among the most important things for how they approach, many people approach using different technologies. And I think it's one of the reasons why blockchain has taken so long to gather critical adoption across payments or a range of use cases that should have already taken off. It's convenience, because there are tools in place that make your life better, faster, easier, and there are safeguards in place if things go wrong. And now, whether that's the most efficient or best path for society or for yourself, it doesn't matter, it's convenient. And I think as language models continue to evolve in their capabilities, and the responses become better and better, and hallucinations become less and less apparent, I think we have to be very careful about how people approach these tools and how convenient they are in being able to answer any question that you have, or do your job for you, or do your homework, or summarize a book for you. I think it's going to potentially erode or risk eroding a lot of the critical thinking capabilities that we have as individuals, as students, and the outputs that we receive won't always be correct. But it's convenient and it's easier for a lot of people. So I think, end of the day, it's an interesting technology. I think part of it is kind of a smoke and mirrors to a degree in how they're architected. But I'm concerned that the convenient path often becomes a path that's very heavily traveled. Whether or not it's the best path forward remains to be seen. But I think there are ways to put safeguards in place. And I am a new father. I'm concerned about what school looks like for my son. I'm concerned about what learning looks like for my son. And I think these tools can help professionals today do their job a little more efficient. Like, I wish it was capped at that to a degree until we figured out how to approach young minds in this area. But the user base is wide in demographic and in age. And the value it provides to different demographics, I think, is very different. And I think for us to over-index on the value of this for the younger generation is very risky. And that's what worries me. And that's kind of why we're trying to build a version of this capability that you have a bit more control over in terms of how knowing what goes in to weighing these models and having a sense of, or at least the ability to build custom plugins that can real-time determine whether the outputs of these models are truthful or potentially a hallucination.
One of the cutest applications I've seen in the academic field is like the possibility to upload a paper and then question the LLM about the content of the paper, simplifying a lot of the access to maybe very complicated studies or things like this. Why don't we give some time to our public for a few questions? We have about 6 minutes. Okay.
Hello, yes, my name is Nicholas. I was wondering your opinion on the latest developments in terms of blockchain and AI together, either with payments or service sharing and security, of course. I was wondering, it's just the one that I know that it's like one of the most advanced, but I'm not sure in terms of you guys' opinions or what's current in the market because it does change so fast. AGIX, I don't know if you're familiar with it. It was Ben Ortzel, I think, is the computer scientist who founded that one. So just that. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not familiar with that specific instance. I know a protocol called OLAS, Autonomous Network, OLAS, OLAS. They're essentially a blockchain-based protocol that's building a set of automated agents that operate on chain that can execute simple or complex transactions. I think a lot of the use cases that actually have some development behind them that are actually being deployed are around using automated AI bots to execute trading strategies on chain. Now, how interesting that is, I don't know. I think you're trying to combine a lot of pieces, and does that result in a better outcome than a trading strategy that's deployed by current technologies? I'm not entirely sure. One thing we're looking at doing at Sanctum is fine-tuning models on real-time blockchain data. So essentially, you could create a version of Llama 3 that is up to speed on what's happened to the latest block in Ethereum, whether that's transaction history, price feeds. You can use this model, and it can interact with either a trader, an analyst, or even one of these automated bots, and you have kind of an interaction between those two parties to inform better alpha, better trading practices, for example. But I think, to answer your question, it's super interesting. From what I've seen, though, the technology isn't quite there yet on both sides. It's pretty cumbersome for us to do this. It took a while to train the model, and then to plug in an agent. It's a whole. You're better off using a human trader to kind of interact with that model via a chat interface. It's kind of a novel POC, but that's kind of where I'm seeing it at right now.
So the AI could possibly write the smart contract?
I mean, in a different use case, potentially it could code the smart contract if you trained it on Solidity. But in this case, essentially you could predefine a trading strategy across a certain set of digital assets, and you could either train a model on that trading strategy, or you could code that trading strategy into OLAS or another network, and essentially that would inform the trading activities the bot makes if certain market conditions are met, or if certain liquidation thresholds are met, for example. So that's one area that's interesting. There's another one, but I want to give you a chance to, if we have someone else.
I'm not sure if I fully understand your question, but I can share the collaboration we had with the AI companies. That is a combination of blockchain and also AI service. There's a company called media called Defiance Media. They produce news by generative AI. So we help them to embed the widget into their generative AI news. That in Europe and also in the States, the AI Act tells people that you have to reveal if your content is generated by AI, and what percentage you use is generated by AI, and also the AI engine you use, and you have to reveal to them the creators and also any other information. So it's only one technology couldn't save us from deepfakes, but you have to do several combination of those technologies to help you to have to find the truth. So yeah.
Well, do we have another?
So I just had a question in regards to compute. Going traditional companies using them for compute compared to like maybe a blockchain, like render. Have you guys done cost comparisons and seeing like what the difference is on how much it costs to train?
The training is very expensive.
Correct.
Training.
Yeah.
The rendering is probably less expensive.
So I'm curious between traditional versus blockchain. Like, you know, are you guys familiar with render protocol?
Yes, so far on the use of the AI for rendering, you might not know, but my background is actually in real-time rendering and also for global illumination algorithms. So there are still problems with a little artifacts that sometimes emerge, especially if they are video sequences. But in general, let's say the solutions are trending toward a very high quality. So they are becoming actually a way to integrate or improve traditional rendering systems. So there are a number of things that will be addressed, especially in the virtual reality realm, that will be leveraging generative AI massively. It's probably a matter of another 5-6 years, but I think we will get there very soon.
One thing I want to just add to that. So I think to train a model using blockchain technology would be an immense, inefficient way to do it. I think one thing we've looked at, or the idea of compute, is how do you support inference? How do you support fine-tuning using decentralized compute? So right now, a lot of this is done either on web-based models with OpenAI servers, or with Sanctum, it's done using your laptop's compute power. But there are companies like Akash Network and Obel Network that essentially facilitate access to unused compute elsewhere in the world, whether it's a laptop or a workstation, and they create incentives to allow you to basically use these to run a query or tune a model using a device that otherwise wouldn't have the capability to do that. So I think that's probably where blockchain in the near term has a really interesting use case around compute, because there's a ton of underutilized compute out there. These new MacBooks and PCs are getting really, really powerful, and for most people, they're not using the compute to capacity all the time. So if there's a way to let your computer run in the background, leave it on, kind of automatically sell unused compute to someone running an inference in a different country or a different state, make some money doing that in a very secure way, that to me is very interesting. And we've looked at that, comparing how the problem is centralized servers are probably going to win out.
So eventually we can bring these outside. I want to thank you, Christian and Chun-Che, for being here today.
Thank you, guys.
What you're doing, and really looking forward to see more developments from your companies, which I will be happy to keep an eye on.